Cumberland Gap, Tennessee is a small town of about 500 people across the mountains from Middlesboro, Kentucky. The town grew up along a game trail that was followed by buffalo and other herd animals for thousands of years. Cherokee and Shawnee native tribes followed the herds and often fought each other for hunting territory through here, so much in fact that the pioneers would later name the trail the Warrior's Path. The area that later became known as Cumberland Gap was a gateway through the mountains that saw pioneers travel on their way through here to new settlements west of the mountains. It was actually surveyor Thomas Walker who is credited for discovering the path for the white settlers, although the gap had long before been discovered by animals and the natives of the land. Daniel Boone bought Boone Trace through here. The Wilderness Road passed by, and eventually Highway 25E made its way through the town too. Cumberland Gap became a postal town in 1803 and a city in 1907. The town changed hands 4 times during the Civil War, but no battles actually took place here. In the late 1880s, a railroad tunnel was built right below the gap for the Knoxville, Cumberland Gap, and Louisville Railroad to support iron production in the area, which helped develop the nearby towns of Harrogate, Tennessee, and Middlesboro, Kentucky. When Highway 25E came across the mountains, it served for decades, from the times of horses and wagons to modern automobiles. In 1996, a new 4-lane tunnel was completed, and Highway 25E bypassed the little town of Cumberland Gap. The annual economy declined almost by half in a 10-year period from 1994 to 2004. Today, tourism, education, arts, and service-related industries provide jobs, but nearly 90% of the residents commute to other parts of the area for work. But Cumberland Gap has survived and even thrived in recent years. As nearby Lincoln Memorial University has grown, so has Cumberland Gap. Tourists have found out that the original gap has gone back in time to its historic condition, and the word continues to spread. You can come and walk the trails that led the buffalo, the same trails that the Native American Indians followed, and the same area and trails where Daniel Boone led settlers to new lives. Walk the corridor of Highway 25E roadway and see what it looked like before, when the wilderness became the roadway, and then the roadway became the wilderness again. This railroad tunnel is the tunnel that was built in the late 1880s to support the local iron industry, and the tracks and tunnel are still used today. And this is just a short distance from Main Street, Cumberland Gap, from the iron furnace parking area. Just a short distance from Main Street, Cumberland Gap, are a series of interconnected trails that will lead you into the woods and into the area where the 25E roadbed used to exist. Lots of recreational opportunities, literally just a couple of blocks off of Main Street. The iron furnace was an iron production facility. The part of the furnace that still stands today is a site where tourists love to visit and take pictures. The iron furnace was built in around 1819 and produced iron and steel up through the 1800s. Vast amounts of ore were available throughout this area and were transported to the iron furnace, where the ore was mixed with limestone to produce iron. When you leave the iron furnace, there is a trail that proceeds up the hill and takes you back up toward the 25E roadbed. And along the way, if you're a keen observer, you will notice things like this. It's a foundation for an old building that existed on the roadway that led toward King Solomon's Cave, which later became known as Cudjoe Cavern, and now it is renamed the Gap Cave, which is the original name. But these stones are still piled up and represent a building that once existed here in the 25E corridor, or the Cumberland Gap corridor. This trail leads up to the saddle of the Gap and back toward Kentucky. If you turn around the other way, in the other direction, you're headed more south and more toward Tennessee and Virginia and the Gap Cave. After they built the tunnel and closed 25E, spent a lot of money and reshaped this ground quite a bit. But this, where I am walking, is part of the old 25E roadbed on its way to Cudjoe Caverns, which is now called the Gap Cave. But this trail is built where the old 25E used to run. They reshaped it, planted hundreds and thousands of trees to return it to the condition it would have been in prior to the construction of the road. Did a really good job reclaiming this. Hi there. Last time I was through here, I was driving a car.
Oh, yeah.
looking for Cudjoe Caverns.
Yep, I mean, this is the way you would go. This is 25E, sometimes Nick called Massacre Mountain.
Massacre Mountain?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, how far is the cave from here?
Not that much farther, like a couple, like maybe.
You can kind of actually see some of the reclamation here, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty
This
cool.
was Wilderness Road before that.
Oh, yeah.
Was, you know, the pathway through where Native Americans, you know, settlers.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
And Boone Trace before that?
Yep.
Warrior's Path before that?
Exactly. Bison before
Buffalo
that.
before that?
Yeah.
I imagine this is a little slick. You can kind of see the reclamation through here where they did some work. 25E came right smack dab through here on its way to the caverns. Cudjoe Caverns. Amazing. Yeah, these grasses and stuff and remnants here you can see of excavation and dozer work where they returned this back to look like wilderness again. Old 25E, Wilderness Road, Boone Trace, Warrior's Path, Buffalo Trails. A lot of history to this gap. See all these rock that used to line the side of the road. The grasses down there were part of the reclamation process. 25E would have been right down there running from left to right. And then there was a little, best I can remember, a stair step that brought you up to Cudjoe Cavern.
I told them I would hold on to
And
her if they wanted to go.
here it is, now called the Gap Cave. Standing here at the entrance, it's like air conditioning coming out of here constantly. There's a historic marker right here by the entrance, and a quote from Dr. Thomas Walker, who said when they found the cave, it was emitting cool air continuously.
Oh, right.
So if you ever remember coming to Cudjoe Caverns, which is right there, in your youth, this area has been totally reclaimed and rebuilt and returned to the way that it was originally before man encroached with roads and so on and so forth. Just amazing the amount of work that they did here. But you can almost visualize that 25 would run through here and through the gap. That's the way toward Kentucky. There's probably places down there where there's still some visible blacktop that you can see. As you're walking along this trail, you sometimes get caught up in it all. If you kind of keep a keen eye on the trail or off the edge of the trail, sometimes you'll spot some blacktop. Right there is some blacktop from the old road. Blacktop. It's going right through there and following that curve right around through there. But they've done an outstanding job returning this to wilderness as the hustle and bustle of automobiles came through here for several decades. As previously mentioned, as you're walking along, you'll see some of these widths where grasses are growing, and you know that that's just not natural forest right here. This is a part of a reclamation project to return the 25E corridor back into its natural state. And as you're walking along on this trail, you also spot things like this. This is a culvert. These rocks right here were part of a highway culvert, so the road would have come through here. Old 25E. The blacktop that I saw, that I had on screen just a few minutes ago, is just up there a little ways around that next bend. So I was determined to go until I found some blacktop, and I did. So now I'm heading back toward Cumberland Gap. But all along this way, you see the width of this highway. Going to the high wall right there, grass is growing. Yeah, it's just, they've done a great job reclaiming it, taking it back to its natural condition. It's places like this where the old road more than likely was more down in here. There's more width down in there, and there's young growth, 25 years or less. They reclaimed this, in the last 30 years. So all these young trees have had time to get to where they are now. But lots of grass is growing. So it's very likely that the roadbed was not following the trail here, but a little off trail. Nonetheless, pretty cool place. You can see grasses growing right down in there really well. Almost a flat area. This would have been too narrow for the 25E corridor here, but down through there would not have been. It was a treacherous road, even on a good day. So I drove over to Cumberland Gap today for a little festival that pertained to trails and hiking and the outdoors. But whether there's a festival going on here or not, there's always quite a few things to do in this little town. Just walking around and gobbling up the history of Cumberland Gap, getting off the beaten path a little bit and going to the trails, exploring the Cumberland Gap, the old Wilderness Road and Boone Trace corridors, the old Gap Cave, the Iron Furnace. There's a lot of stuff to do around here in this little town, and some pretty good places to eat too. So check out Cumberland Gap, Tennessee sometime. A little bit of an example of the various offerings. Wilderness Road Trail, back to the Cumberland Gap, turn right to go to the historic Cumberland Gap, original Saddle of the Gap, Tri-State Peak. So there's all kinds of different options you've got here on the trails. Just about a 4-mile drive from downtown Cumberland Gap and up the Skyline Road, you will reach the Pinnacle Overlook. It's just a short hike from the parking lot to the Overlook, which offers a spectacular view of Cumberland Gap down below, as well as the entire area. When standing on the Pinnacle Overlook, just below you is the Gap Cave, and running from left to right, the old 25E corridor, the Wilderness Road, Boone Trace, and Warrior's Path, all following the same corridor below your feet, running from left to right. And for obvious reasons, the Pinnacle Overlook is probably one of the more visited attractions in the Cumberland Gap area. So I'm back in the town of Cumberland Gap. Probably no more than 2 miles, 2.5 miles of hiking to see what I saw. You can hike about as much as you want. And then get down to the town and look at some of the quaint nature of the town itself and the remodeling that's been done to the houses. It's just a beautiful little town and a good place to visit. So drive over through the tunnel and get off and visit Cumberland Gap, Tennessee, whenever you get a chance.